There's only so much that the schools can do. Again, there's just not enough staff or support to meet the level of needs. So the schools do often recommend an outside provider. And we really are up against a lot with the parents, and I don't know if it's maybe a financial issue. Some parents just do not consent to the child being in therapy. Something we hear a lot is, oh, they're just doing it for attention. Well, kids and teens do need a lot of attention. They just do. Like, that's not a bad thing. Everyone needs attention. We're social creatures. And that, like, oh, they're just being dramatic, they're fine. But we are seeing an increase in self-harm. We are seeing an increase in suicidal ideation, suicide attempts. So trying to get the parents on board is a little difficult. And I think there's also this with parents, there's a fear.
Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between.
Hi, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. Thank you for joining me today. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And I have a great guest today. Her name is Desiree Argentina. She is a mental health therapist and a holistic wellness coach. She is very passionate about sharing mental health tips and education to support your wellness journey. She also works with teens in a school environment. So she has some great insights for us today on teens and mental health and how we can better support them. She also has a private practice and works with adults. So we're also going to learn some important and useful coping strategies that we can use ourselves to support us in dealing with our own emotional regulation, anxiety, and feelings of overwhelm. She is also the podcast host of The Wellness Project with Des. And so if you could use some tips on how to manage your emotions, how to feel less anxious or manage overwhelm, then you are definitely in the right place. Hi, Des. Thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be speaking with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think we got some good stuff to talk about. Just tell everyone what exactly you do for a profession.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I am a social worker. So I work in a middle school and high school with students providing mental health supports. And I also have a private practice and coaching practice. So I see adults in my coaching and private practice.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to pick your brain today then. You know what? I think it's fascinating working with young people, first of all, because they're just so full of life and energy, and they've got so much going on all at once. It's like this big, huge umbrella of stuff that they're in, And I know that the mental health stuff is huge with young people and teenagers today. So tell me a little bit about just how you work with kids and what kind of stuff you see come up.
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the child, but oh gosh, there's so much to talk about with this topic. So I used to work with young children, but now I work with kids in a middle school and high school. That's typically like 11 to 18 years old. Yeah. And so depends on the circumstance, but I feel like a big thing is that kids aren't feeling seen. They're not really feeling heard. One thing that's great is they are very well aware of mental health. They're very open to talking about it. I find it much more common now with kids and adolescents than adults. There's no really as much of a stigmatization with mental health as there used to be. And I don't know if that's because of all this social emotional learning that's being put in schools, or this awareness, or I don't know, even when you're watching shows, characters bring up their therapist or mental health, things like that. So I don't know if it's just because we're seeing a societal shift where we talk about it a lot more. Songs even mention their therapists,
Yeah. Well, so many kids have phones in their hands too. So they're on social media. It's really being talked about more, which is so awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So the social media is a whole thing I could get into, because there are a lot of
good and bad.
Yes, a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah.
But they are very open about their mental health, which I think is great. But we're seeing a lot of anxiety, a lot of depressive symptoms. suicide is one of the leading causes of death for adolescents. So we're
Yeah.
seeing that a lot of them are struggling. And I think that for teenagers specifically, they're in this strange, being a teenager is really, really hard because they're not quite a kid. They're not quite an adult. And some people treat them like adults, some people treat them like children, or both, depending on the circumstance. It's just a very confusing time. And then we're
Hmm.
seeing too a lot of bullying. So, back when I was young, if bullying was a thing, it was just in school and there was this removal, right? You go home and you don't have to deal with that anymore. But now because all of them have cell phones, there's this bullying on social media and it just goes with them everywhere. It just carries through
Hmm.
any area of their life. So there's no really escape from that. Um, Struggle with parental relationships. A lot of the time, I find that teens are really struggling with their family dynamics, family relationships. So they're
Hmm.
up against a lot, and school is their job, but a lot of them are working also. I have a lot of teens that are either looking for work to try to help support their families, can't find work. A lot of them aren't getting hired. So, yeah, a lot. They're dealing with a lot. High
Hmm.
expectations with school, trying to get all the things done, right? Trying to get all their assignments done and these projects, and then a lot of them have like a lot of chores at home. A lot of them are very parentified and have to take care of younger siblings. So there's a lot going on with the kids. There's a lot going on with the
Hmm.
teens.
I want to talk too about some of the stuff that comes up for them, like say growing up with in dysfunctional families, growing up with alcoholic parents, or
Hmm.
addiction, or abuse of any kind. So, how are these effects on kids? How are they showing up in their teen years?
Yeah, and it depends on the kid, but we're seeing you'll see either kind of behavioral issues,
Hmm.
but that could look like it's so different for some because some really internalize, right?
Yeah.
And there's those kids that get overlooked. So I see a lot with students that are dealing with dysfunctional homes, abusive homes. They have these like perfectionism tendencies. So these
Mm.
like type A, very high expectations of themselves. They want to kind of keep the peace in the home, so their behaviors are perfect, right? They're kind of the peacekeepers at home. They're the peacekeepers and like the quote unquote therapists of their friend group. Everyone comes to them. They need to be there to support everyone. They're very
Yeah.
parentified. They're taking care of not only their siblings but also their parents. They're just trying to make sure they have this like strong sense of I need to control everything, like straight A's. If anything is under an A, there's this like meltdown, right? They have a really hard time with that sense of self-worth. But these are the kids that often get overlooked because their behavior is perfect. They're so responsible. They're
Hmm.
doing well. Their grades are great. So a lot of people don't know they're really struggling internally. And then we see the opposite where some kids, teens, they don't know how to like really verbalize these things. They don't know what's going on with them. There's a lot of these like really big feelings that they're not able to cope with. They're dealing with a lot. So these come out in behaviors, explosive behaviors. This might look like fights or kind of dysfunction within their friend groups, yelling at teachers, being disrespectful, not doing any work at all, or being really oppositional. So it could be these kind of two like polar opposites. And then we're seeing some of these more extreme behaviors of like substance use, self harm, things like that.
Yeah. How do you deal with the parents at all?
So in my current position, no, but in my past positions, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
And what's
Hmm.
that like? Because that's got to be a whole nother ball game.
It can be really challenging. Yeah, it can be really challenging. There's kind of people say in the field, like the hardest part of working with the kids is actually working with their parents. They're going through a lot, right? And we need to understand that and meet them with compassion and support. But there also needs to be accountability for their actions and to understand that there's different ways to manage these feelings and to cope with them. And right, they are in difficult circumstances, but it's also not an excuse for that kind of escalated behavior. But
Hmm.
sometimes parents, they're really difficult to work with, won't have the child take any sort of accountability. And it's really hard to kind of teach children certain things, coping strategies, just social emotional awareness and
Hmm.
just emotional regulation when the parents aren't on board, but also you're trying to teach this in the school system or in therapy, and then they go home to that dysfunctional environment.
Yeah.
So it can be really challenging, but it is helpful that these students know. Like I've had students that wouldn't do a single assignment, wouldn't even write their name on a piece of paper, but they came to school every single day. And they were
Mm-hmm.
very close with the teachers because that was their support system, and they
Right.
trusted that staff and they felt safe in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the emotional regulation? What does that mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, so emotional regulation is so basically we all have feelings all the time. So it's not an absence of feelings. It's really being able to manage those feelings and cope with them in a healthy way. So we go through our days feeling all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're impacted by other people, we're impacted by circumstances, and our feelings are just our messengers. They're letting us know what is going on, how we're interpreting things, how we see the world, how our outlook, how we perceive the world, right? And so with our nervous systems, if we're not regulated, so if there's a lot going on at home and don't know how to cope, we have this fight, flight, or freeze response. Something if somebody comes and they're just if they come to school or come to therapy or just are engaging with their friends, their life, and they're dysregulated because they have a lot going on, don't know how to manage the feelings, that can cause a lot of issues, and that carries on into our future. Like you said, it carries on into
Mm-hmm.
adulthood. We don't become an adult and then those things just turn off, and we understand emotional regulation. So,
Yeah.
really, sometimes those feelings are so intense that people just don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to process those feelings, how to sit with that discomfort, because those intense feelings can be really, really uncomfortable. And we just don't know how to manage it. But then when there is that just kind of chronic stress, the dysfunction at home, maybe dysfunction at school, in personal lives, in relationships, any sort of maybe smaller thing can set off that
Mm-hmm.
emotional disruption, right? So whereas maybe somebody like bumps into you in the hallway, if you're emotionally regulated, would be like, oh, sorry, okay, no problem. But if you're not, and if you're emotionally dysregulated and somebody bumps into you in the hallway, that might end up in like a big fight or a fist fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And awareness for other people too who are encountering that. So into this healing journey for so many years, I see people in a different light, when someone's
Mm,
struggling, and teenagers don't really have that capacity yet because they don't have the life experience either to actually come to that awareness. But getting help and support for sure, like what you do in the schools is great. It's so needed for the kids to help them learn that kind of stuff, right?
yeah, and I just feel like
Yeah.
I've been in many different schools, and the schools just do not have enough support for the amount of
Yeah.
students that need the support. Counselors, school social workers, paras, we need way more of them than we have.
Hmm.
It's just not enough for the level of need, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that's across the board too, honestly. Like
Mm.
the access to it. I think there's a huge gap for what people can access and what there is, right? Talk a little bit about your practice with adults. So when you have adults coming in that have had childhoods like this, what are some of the coping mechanisms that come up?
Yeah, so a lot of what I see is people pleasing, perfectionism, and these are maladaptive
Hmm.
ways to cope, right? And these are patterns that we learn as children and carry on into adulthood. A lot of this kind of hyper independence, a lot of a cycle of burnout. Burnout is a really big one. Kind of that caretaking, codependence, lack of boundaries is a huge one. Lack
Hmm.
of self-care, prioritizing a lot of prioritizing other people, prioritizing work over like personal needs, wants, desires, lack of self-care. So see a lot of that.
Hmm. Yeah, when you take that into relationships and into parenting then, and it just becomes really messy.
Mm-hmm.
This is how generational dysfunction carries on if we're not getting the help that we need or not recognizing these patterns. How can we start to create awareness for that? Like, what are some of the things you can do for yourself if you find that you're kind of feeling stuck or overwhelmed or you feel like you're in a cycle?
Yeah, so that is the first step, right? Realizing there can't be any positive change without first being aware of what needs to
Mhm.
change. So really, uh, being mindful if this same pattern is coming up again and again. How am I here again? I feel so burnt out. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so exhausted. So paying really good attention to that. Am I in this repeated cycle of burnout? But also, as simple as it sounds, are you meeting your basic needs? Because a lot of people are not. Are you eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Are
Hmm.
you showering regularly? Are you taking care of your laundry, or are you wearing dirty clothes because you haven't done the laundry? Are you washing your hair? Are you brushing your teeth? Are you taking your lunch break? A lot of the people I work with do not take their lunch breaks. They don't eat until they get home for dinner. So are you taking care of your basic needs?
Hmm. Yeah, that's huge. I think we just don't think about it, right? It becomes
Hmm.
this, we're just in autopilot sometimes, and you're not even aware that you're actually doing it until it's literally 5 o'clock and you're like, why am I so hungry?
Yes,
You know?
no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again,
Yeah.
just not no self-care, no strong lack of boundaries that is in personal, romantic relationships, friendships, at work. Are you overloading your plate? Are you saying yes to all the things? And say a coworker comes to you or your boss, "Hey, can you get this project done?" You absolutely know you cannot. You are at capacity, you're overwhelmed. And yeah, sure, I'll get that done, right? Is there a lack of boundaries? Are you always there for other people and taking care of all the things for everybody else? Are you kind of micromanaging? Is there's this sense of control? Is there this really strong discomfort when things don't go exactly as planned, or somebody doesn't do things in a certain way? Is there this, sense of control and having things to be kind of predictable, right? So just paying attention to those things. This kind of view that everything has to go right, or it's kind of like the end of the world, and that's a really can be a really intense feeling.
I can relate with that for sure. I had huge perfectionism tendencies to try to control the stuff that was going on. And it's based out of a fear of, you know, not being in control or not being safe or not everything going the way that that you think it should, just so that you can feel stable.
Also, that sense of too, growing up with a family that maybe had a lot of dysfunction, substance use, really wanting to feel loved and feeling like love is conditional. So, as an adult in romantic relationships or with friendships, I have to do all the things for all the people so that they won't be mad at me, and so that I'll be loved and accepted. I'm needed. People need me, and equating that kind of people needing you with love.
Yeah. So, what are some of the strategies, not just for adults, but for teens too, that you suggest in order for them to maybe get into therapy? How do you start helping them to become aware that they might need that? Because, I mean, I've had teenagers too, and I'm telling you, it's like a fight to get them to go into talk to somebody.
Mm.
There's such a big fear there, right? How do you tackle that with kids?
Yeah, so actually, my experience is a little different. My experience working with kids and teens is that they want to be in therapy, and the obstacle is the parents. So
Really?
yeah, so that's been my experience, is that the kids and teens that I've worked with want therapy, want to be in therapy, want that support, want somebody to talk to, and we've talked to the parents, hey, like, your kid's having some issues or expressing, they want to talk to someone, or it's our recommendation that they really have someone to talk with outside of school. There's only so much that the schools can do. Again, there's just
Hmm.
not enough staff or
Yeah.
support to meet the level of needs. So the schools do often recommend an outside provider. And we really are up against a lot with the parents, and I don't know if it's particularly maybe a financial issue, but even, I worked in Colorado, and they had this great program that they had, I think it was 5 free sessions for
Hmm.
students, therapy sessions for students. But some parents just do not consent to the child being in therapy. Something we hear a lot is, oh, they're just doing it for attention. Well, kids and teens do need a lot of
Hmm.
attention. They just do. Like, that's not a bad thing. Saying that they need
Yeah.
attention, it's not a bad thing. Everyone needs attention. We're social creatures. We do need that love
Yeah.
and support and care. And that like, oh, they're just being dramatic, they're fine. But we are seeing an increase in self-harm. We are seeing an increase in suicidal ideation, suicide attempts. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the parents on board is a little difficult. And I think there's also this with parents. I don't know if it's this kind of fear that because, we are mandated reporters, so meaning, if there is any abuse in the home and the child says something, it would have to be
Right.
reported. So I don't know if there's like a fear around that or a fear, even if there's nothing like that involved, that, oh, everything's just going to be blamed on me because I'm the parent. So they're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk badly about me. And like that kind of perception could
Yeah.
be a worry as well.
I feel like they go to blaming themselves. Like, I must be a bad parent if my kid needs therapy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, it's fear-based for sure. Yeah. Tell me about, let's say, the top 5 coping strategies that kids can use.
Okay, yeah, that's a great one. So, one, I think if parents are listening and you have a good relationship with the school or you have a good relationship with their teacher or school counselor, really working with the school, I think breaks can be really important for kids. And that could be just like a teacher allowing the student to go to the bathroom, to like take a minute.
Uh-huh.
I think people also need to consider, sorry to go off on this tangent, but people
No.
also need to consider that it's really hard to sit for like 7, 8 hours a day. It's really hard for an adult. So imagine for a kid.
Exactly.
It's really difficult.
Yeah.
So just allowing those kind of breaks, I think, is really important. And there's different things. So one huge one for students that I hear for kids and teens all the time is music.
Mm,
Music is their coping strategy. Like they relate to the music, they identify with the music, it helps to
mhm,
calm them. So if it's really no issue at home or at school while they're doing work, like I know a lot of schools don't let kids have like headphones in, but if it's okay, like letting them listen to music. Music is just one thing I hear just from all students, music.
mhm,
Um, some students are really artistic and tapping into that artistic side of themselves. So if again in school, if a teacher can let them like draw or doodle or something while they're listening to a lesson, while they're doing the work. 'Cause I know just for me personally, if I'm on a meeting, like I have such a hard time. I
mhm,
cannot focus. I'm fidgeting all around, I'm moving all around. I have a really hard time. So if I am in a meeting and it's just kind of like I have to listen for that hour, whatever it is, and that's the case for students, right? They're sitting there just like listening to the teacher talk,
mhm,
or sometimes it's engaging with whatever activity. But maybe like I'm always coloring on meetings. Like I have a coloring book and I'm always
mhm,
coloring because it really helps me to focus. I just listen better when I'm doing something with my hands. So if there's something like creative a student can do. Also, I would say, as for kind of developing that emotional regulation, something that's so important to keep in mind that parents and, you know,
mhm,
staff, teachers, whoever can teach students and adults is really sitting in that discomfort of the emotion and
mm,
just understanding that these emotions are really intense and we feel like we have to do something about it. But sometimes it's going to just it just needs to work its way through. But something we know is that naming the emotion helps to lower the intensity of the emotion. So helping children name the emotion,
mhm,
and it's not just mad, sad, happy. There's a large range of emotions. So helping them name the emotion can help to lower that intensity and doing things to practice sitting in that discomfort, that letting them know this feeling is going to pass. I know reflecting that emotion to them. I know that you're
mhm,
feeling very angry. I know you're feeling very frustrated. I know you're feeling very irritated and that is valid and also teaching those social emotional lessons that okay, the feeling is completely valid, but that doesn't mean the behavior is. The feelings and
mhm,
behaviors are very, very different, right? They're not the same. So how we feel impacts our behavior. It doesn't have to control our behavior. So different coping strategies like just in at home or at school, taking breaks, allowing them to do their different coping strategy, whether that's, art or music. Are they able to step outside, take a walk? Physical activity is great for releasing that energy.
mhm,
So is this something like, you know, going to do jumping jacks or wall sits or,
Mhm.
push-ups or something to like release that energy. Muscle relaxation, right? Just different like massaging your hands or different things like that. Breathing exercises
Mhm.
is great. Co-regulation. So if you're seeing that your child or student is angry, breathing with them. Hey, can you take a few deep breaths with me? And that doing that coping strategy, that co-de-escalation. So breathing with them, breathe in through the nose for a few seconds,
Mhm.
hold, breathe out, and do that as long as that takes. So co-regulation, just for adults to know, is really, really helpful. And not meeting the level of emotion. So really, as an adult, staying regulated, using a
Mhm.
calm tone, using calm, relaxed body language. I hear you. I understand. I'm
Yeah.
hearing you're frustrated. I'm hearing you're upset. Just staying regulated again is going to really help with that co-regulation.
The physical stuff, like you said, the massaging your hands and stuff like that, would teaching kids a little simple tapping methods
Yes.
be
Yeah,
really useful?
that'd be great. Something I love for younger kids is the butterfly hug. So kind of crossing your
Okay.
arms and tapping your shoulders
Oh.
alternately. And you could frame that to kid like it's called a butterfly hug. So let's be a butterfly and tapping back and
Mhm.
forth slowly with that co-regulation of breathing. So
Yeah.
you do the butterfly hug as well. This one's really great for little kids.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that for sure. I have heard so much about tapping and stuff and how it distracts you too from that intensity. And so just to de-escalate a little bit and focus on something else, I think is really important. But yeah, those are great,
Mm-hmm.
great strategies. So if you took that same information into the adult world, what would some of those look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I work with adults, there is a little bit more of that awareness, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So something I do with adults, and you could do this with kids too, but something I do with adults is we work on identifying triggers, I think is really important. So what are kind of the things that are setting off or impacting, escalating these higher level of emotions. And sometimes when we go back, I have clients, the people I work with, sometimes journal about these things because
Hmm.
it's hard when you come every week or every other week and you kind of forget those circumstances, but it really helps to have that data. So
Yeah.
if you're having an escalated emotion or you're having, what is the particular issue? Are you somebody that struggles with a lot of people pleasing? Are you somebody that struggles with a lot of perfectionism, burnout, whatever the case may be? Journaling about that or keeping, it doesn't even have to be a journal, but just like, bullet points, even what was the circumstance? Who were you talking to? Was this at work? Was this at school? Was this in your romantic relationship? Do you get these kind of escalated feelings or behaviors every time you like talk to your mom on the phone? What are the circumstances? What are the triggers? So identifying the triggers and then what are you exhibiting? What are the emotions? What's happening internally? What are the
Hmm.
feelings? What are the thoughts? What is the intensity on a scale of 0 to 10? And what does that look like? And really going through this scale of 0 to 10. So, say 0 is just emotional regulation. You are zen, you are calm. This is how you would like
Hmm.
to be, right? That's your
Yeah.
emotional regulation. And what does 10 look like? What is that extreme? Does this look like turning to substances? Does this look like self harm? Does this look like
Mm.
screaming, slamming doors, throwing things? Like, what does that 10 look like? And then, really, for you, it's different for everybody. So, what is your extreme, intense, emotion? And kind of labeling the 0 through 10, where are we at? And then identifying in that tracker where were you in that circumstance of like on the scale, and just
Mhm.
letting people know too, we can't realistically go from a 10 to like a 2,
No.
right? So that's not realistic.
Yeah, no.
So really, what can we do? What can we implement? What kind of strategies and tools can we implement to go from like a 10 to a 9 or a
Mhm.
10 to an 8? And just does that look like walking away? Does that look like the deep breathing? Does that look like saying to your partner, I'm going to explode, I need you to leave? Like, I'm like, that's,
Mm-hmm.
tapping into whatever level of self-awareness that you are capable of, and whatever small change, a few percentage points, you are capable of. What can be helpful in that moment? And kind of practicing that outside of the escalation or outside of the trigger. So, right, if you're somebody that knows that music is really helpful for you and music is a great coping strategy, well, outside of that trigger, outside of that event, making maybe a go-to playlist when you're calm. What are the kind of songs
Mm-hmm.
that I know will help me to regulate? Is this a calming playlist that it's like calm, relaxing music, or is this like rage heavy metal where I could just like scream to it and jump up and down in my room, right? What does this look like for you?
Yeah.
What is helpful? Everybody's different. What is helpful for you? And then also putting into a plan, if you do have somebody at home that is like a trusting person, a parent, your partner, roommates, whatever the case, and having that vulnerable and difficult conversation with them that, hey, like, I know that these behaviors, I want to work on these kind of things. I'm going to need your support. It doesn't have to be like a big escalation, but even just that, like, I go into like a rage cleaning because I need everything like under control and I have these perfectionism tendencies and I want to try to like sit with that discomfort and kind of change this a little bit. How can we work together? Because we heal in community. So keeping in mind
Mm-hmm.
too that it's not always possible to do all of these changes on your own. You're going to have to, speak with the people in your life that you're close to. If that is the case, some people live alone and that's fine too. But if you do have roommates or like you live with family, live with your partner.
Mm-hmm. I love that. We do heal in communities. It's so, so true. Support groups are great if people are open to that. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes just hearing yourself in someone else's words gives you, you're not alone, and hope that there's, some way of overcoming this and you're not alone in your struggles, right? So even that, even that area, if you don't have someone to talk to in your immediate circle, there are a lot of support groups out there, and some of them are even on Zoom. So if you don't
Yes.
feel comfortable leaving your house even, So yeah, I love those tips, and I love the way that you broke down the 0 to 10, because a lot of people don't understand what that scale looks like. And for someone who struggles, let's say with all or nothing thinking and those patterns, not outlining and not identifying what those numbers mean to them, can be kind of leaving you feeling hopeless in a situation because you don't have a guide. You don't have like a scale to go by, right? So yeah, I love that.
And it's really hard to kind of verbalize sometimes
Hmm.
what's going on with us. So it does just help to have some sort of data to look at sometimes, and
Hmm.
we're able to go back over time and really identify patterns, which I think is important because we're just not always aware of how we interact or behave day to day. Maybe you'll, come to, a support group or therapy or your coach or whatever, and you're like, oh, I did great this week and
Hmm.
whatever. Like I had no people pleasing, tendencies. And
Yeah.
then, during the conversation, it's like, oh, my boss asked me to do this. And I said yes, but I couldn't really. Well, okay. Like, so just really
Yeah.
reflecting maybe each day or in the moment in the circumstance if you catch it. But we don't, like you said before, we're just so many of us are on autopilot all the time. So really maybe we don't notice these behaviors. They're so ingrained. There's such an ingrained pattern that maybe at the end of the day, maybe reflect on the day, your different interactions throughout the day could be really helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. I work with a coach right now, and she'll get you on the phone and she's like, tell me a win. And you're like, oh, deer in the headlights,
Yeah.
or tell me something that you struggled with this week, right? And we forget very easily because our lives are so busy and we have so much data coming at us all the time. So it is hard to remember all of those little details. And I love journaling too. So it's very, it's a mechanical thing, right? There's something about that connection to your brain that really works well with people. So yeah,
Hmm.
love that. Tell me something that you do that helps you stay grounded.
So yeah, that's a great question. So I do actually really like tapping as well.
Hmm.
So there's actually for people, if you are interested in tapping, there's an app that I love to use, Tapping Solutions, and it
Okay.
has yeah. So it is the app is free, and they have a ton of free tappings in the app, and there are paid ones that you do have to behind a paywall, but you can make a playlist. So I just added all of the free ones to my playlist. And
Okay.
it's so, yeah, so I really love that. So I always recommend that app because it's really great and it walks you through the tapping. It says, tap on your eyebrow or tap under your eyes. And
Hmm.
while it's walking you through this kind of meditation. So I do really love meditation. During the day, I find deep breathing to be the easiest, most accessible thing to me
Hmm.
if I'm having a really stressful day, but kind of just like downtime if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling like I'm getting irritable, something I personally love is I'm a big movie watcher. So I will sit
Hmm.
down by myself and I will just watch a movie. And that is really
Hmm.
helpful for me. If I have the time, if I have the space, and that's like if I'm home and I'm like,
Yeah.
not in a good space.
I love that. I am the exact same way. I get to just not think about work and
Mm-hmm.
not think about what's going on or what's happened in the day. And I just immerse myself in that storyline and same
Mm-hmm.
thing about reading a book too. I love sitting down to read a book and not a
Yes.
self-help book. That's not getting out of your head sometimes, but just something that you're really interested in. So yeah, movie or a book.
Yeah.
What do you think has been one of the most impactful pieces of advice that you've ever received?
Most, that's a great question. I would say something that's really impacted me, and I already mentioned it, but learning to sit in the discomfort,
Mm,
building that distress tolerance has been really, really impactful. Just knowing that we don't have to take an action right now to solve whatever, to change our feelings, to really sit in that discomfort is very powerful. And I'm not going to say
mhm.
I'm a pro at it, absolutely not. But it's been really great information to have that to learn to sit in that discomfort. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have done some work in that, and I just was so caught up in if I allow these emotions to come up and move through them, something bad's going to happen. Like, just it's your brain telling yourself this story, but actually being
Hmm.
able to just sit in it and knowing nothing is going to happen if I just feel this is extremely powerful. I could not
And
agree more.
and that
It's hard
too.
work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But just what
Yeah.
you said too, that brings up another point that I always try to keep in mind that, and I tell clients all the time, like our brains lie to us all the time. Like
Oh yeah.
don't always trust your brain. Like your brain will be like worst case scenario, like alarms going off. This is horrible,
Yes.
end of the world. It's not true. Like we can take a step
Yes.
back a little bit.
Yes, 100%. I had heard this guy talking on some video, and he was basically saying the story that we're telling ourselves in our head, we can't really move into the future with a better frame of mind because our brain is always grabbing on to past things and
Mm-hmm.
blowing them up in our head. And so that's what we're basing on moving forward in the future with. And it seems scary because our brain is so hardwired to those old patterns and those old stories. And
Mm-hmm.
literally, it is lying to us. It is
Yes.
a big fat liar for sure. That's great. And tell me one of the best things that's happened to you this year.
I moved. I
Oh,
moved. My boyfriend and I, we like to travel a lot. And well, I
nice.
guess technically not this year, but we moved to Washington State from Colorado. We are originally from New York and we wanted to explore a new place. So we moved to Colorado, lived there for 6 years, and we were ready for a new change. So we just moved to Washington State.
Nice. Nice. I love being open to new experiences. So, yeah,
Yes,
what a great
yes.
way to invite more life into your world, right?
Yeah, so it's been great. It's been great exploring. We love it here. So that's been a really great thing that we did.
Awesome. So, what have you got going on right now? Oh, and I also want to talk about your podcast
Oh
because
yeah.
you do have a podcast. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my website is According to Des, and then my podcast is The Wellness Project with Des.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so I interview experts in the field of mental health and wellness, but I also speak with people who come on with their own personal stories of their mental health journeys, which is great to get those firsthand stories and
Hmm.
just how they've made positive changes in their life and share their struggles to really just normalize that we all go through a lot, right? And that's completely normal, but there are things that we can do and that we can cope with.
Yeah.
So I also see clients in my coaching practice, one-to-one sessions, and I am trying to start up a Mindfulness Monday group. So I have that in the works. It's going to be just probably like 6 to 8 people. I want to keep it pretty small, so that's going to get going soon. And I am hoping to record. I've been talking about it forever, but I have some courses and workshops that I'm hoping to record this summer that will be available on my site too. And I regularly have, blogs, written interviews, things like that, all available on my site.
Nice. Well, I'll put that all in the show notes too, as well as that app that people can access. I think that's really important. So yeah, and people can connect with you and find out what you got going on. You have a Facebook group. Is that
Yes.
open to the public or is that just for your clients?
Yeah, no, it's open to the public, so it is a private group. So you do have to request to join just to
Okay.
keep things,
Yep.
private and safe space. But yeah, I'm
Hmm.
in there every day with mental health and wellness content, so definitely feel free to come in. I post different graphics and blogs and journal prompts and all things like that. So it's really fun. I love running that group. So definitely feel
Nice.
free. You can find that on Facebook, The Wellness Project with Des, and you could also find me on Instagram with that same handle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it has been a pleasure getting to know you, and your insights are awesome. And I hope that people just take even one thing away about how to cope or how to help their kids.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.